Hi, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Burgett. I'm reading you a story today. It's called The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant. And in this story, in a rainbow colored car that smelled like a real car, the relatives came. When they arrived, they were hugged from the kitchen to the front room. All summer they tended the garden and ate up all the strawberries and melons. They plucked banjos and strummed guitars. When they finally had to leave, they were sad, but not for long. They all knew they would be together the next summer. As I read, I am going to ask questions. We will be using words like why and what and how to start our questions. Asking these questions helps us learn even more about what's going on in the story. I hope you enjoy this story. The relatives came. They're getting all packed up, aren't they? It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they'd put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches. And up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. So one of the questions is, why did they leave so early in the morning? Maybe they had a long drive and it took a long time. They wanted to get there early. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drove all night, all day long and all night. So it must have been a long drive. So they drank up all their pop and ate all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. These relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. I wonder why they hugged for hours. What do you think? Yeah, probably because they hadn't seen each other in a long time. And I wonder what wrinkled means. Wrinkled means to be folded over. Yep. Then it was into the house, and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times around, until we all got a turn at the table, there were quiet talk, and we were in twos and threes through the house. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there wasn't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us, and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over their closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. Look at them all sleeping. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. I wonder why it was so different. Do you think? Do you know? Yeah, because there were so many people there. I'm sure there was people snoring and talking in their sleep. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden. They fixed any broken things they could find. They ate up all our strawberries and melons, then promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we come to Virginia. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chests and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road, and then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. The relatives drove on all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses in the different mountains, and they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about next summer. So when you are reading books, make sure that you're asking why something is going on or what is happening in the story. I hope you enjoyed our book today. I'll see you later. Bye.